welcome to the Walter Anderson and Horace Mann Award presentations for 2021. And it's my pleasure to introduce and talk with John Sims today. He is the Walter Anderson Award winner, member of the class of 1992. And we're going to start with a video from him. So enjoy. We'll be right back.
We cannot fall victim to the nauseous, poisonous gas of fear. We must be fearless in the spirit of the great Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, John Brown, and my math teacher, Bill Houston. We must organize a voice against fear and corporate spiritualism that is shaping the consciousness of this country into a machine of mass deception, mass mind control, mass depression, and mass destruction. I am concerned about the signals that are sent when our most radical institutions are not ready or prepared to engage a current critical discourse. What does this mean? It means that there is work to be done to secure the boundaries for honest, deep, and perhaps scary processing. We must protect your voice, Professor Ward Churchill, my voice, and the graduating class of 2000 voice. From silence, censorship, and disinvitation. These voices must not be held hostage by the media or neoconservatives or comfort-driven strategies. Voice security is most essential, foundational, and non-negotiable. I'd rather be broke and free than endowed and silenced.
So that's the first introduction of John Sims, my friend, and as I said, the winner of the Walter Anderson Award in 2021. Now I'll give him a more full introduction. That was his commencement speech at Antioch College in 2005. So the Walter Anderson Award is for breaking ethnic barriers, recognizing contributions by alumni and friends who have advanced Antioch College's ideals by breaking down racial and ethnic barriers. The award is named for Antioch's longtime music department chair, the first African-American department head at a historically non-Black institution of higher education. Nominees should show fortitude and effectiveness in promoting diversity within the Antioch community and beyond, which John well exemplifies. John Sims is a native of Detroit, a prolific conceptual artist, writer, and activist. He has also written for CNN, Al Jazeera, The Huffington Post, The Rumpus, and The Griot. Sims merges his expertise in mathematics with his art, two worlds which, in combination, allow Sims to confront symbols that represent white supremacy. A year after graduating from Antioch, John returned to the college as special assistant to the Dean of Faculty. During this time, he created and organized the cross-cultural field program that took a diverse group of students to the southern U.S. to learn about African American culture by visiting areas in Charleston, Sea Islands, and rural Georgia. This program received strong support from both Coretta Scott King and Congressman John Lewis. John also founded the African American Culture Week, a program of 26 events celebrating African American experience, which became the annual Blues and Gospel Festival of the African American Culture Week, which ran for 25 years in Yellow Springs. For the last 20 years, John has been working on a multimedia art activism project. It's Reclamation Proclamation, which confronts racism in a very public way, re-examining and remixing Confederate iconography as it relates to the African American experience. This fall, he'll be showcasing his work at the Exploratorium in San Francisco and at an off-Broadway staging of the 2020 Divisions of America in New York. And during the presentation, John and I are going to talk about his work and share some of the photos that he's collected. There'll be time at the end for question and answer. So congratulations, John.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I do want to say I'm the class of 90, that's right, 1990. And yeah, look at my younger self right there.
Yeah, this is you in what year? Was this 86?
Yeah, 87. No, this is probably close to 89 maybe, right when I'm about to graduate, I guess.
Nice. So some of the things that we touched on in my introduction, then we're going to kind of flip through these photos and you'll get to see, but it'll help guide our conversation for you. So here's an early photo of you and Leland Clark.
Yeah, so Antioch was very, very important for me because it was one of the institutions that allowed me to get my mind working and my hands dirty. So in Detroit, I went to a college prep high school, but I also went to the Votech school too. So I was doing two schools at once. And so Antioch made was a great opportunity to further that kind of dynamic of doing the work of the hand and the work of the mind. And then in that context, I was also very politically active, both in left-wing working politics in Detroit. So that brought the heart to the table. So being able to work, I have to say my Antioch education has been so important in terms of being able to put me at the feet of some of the greatest minds, and to work closely with folks like Leland Clark, who invented the long heart machine, who was doing incredible work on plain and glucose censoring for folks like who has diabetes and things like that. So that's treasurable experience. And then going off to Germany and being able to study in Germany at the Max Planck Institute and work during the summer at German factories and learn the language and be there when the wall came down, of the very incredible experience that has shaped who I've become as a person who really values integrative thinking and activation.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find out about Antioch? What brought you to the college?
So I think my teacher, went to Oberlin, so I was very interested in a small school that allowed me, even though I could have gone to some bigger schools like U of M and other places, but visiting Antioch and visiting Oberlin, and it was like, okay, I can do my own thing. That's what I would. Just give me time and space and the kind of resources and let me do my thing. So I was kind of motivated in that. And I think Antioch provided that kind of, I don't think it's for everybody, but certainly folks who are very, very motivated and very, serious about developing, not only as a student, but as a conscious thinking human. It was good for me.
Hear, hear.
All right. I need to be working for the admissions department.
That's right. And I think about this, and when we're going to go through this, really doing your own thing, that really is what you have done. Remarkable remark, really, on what you've done. All right. So this was the inaugural African American Cultural Week in 1991.
So let me show you how this happened. So basically, because we got a lot of slides I want to get through. I was a math major, so I hung out with all the geeks and that sort of thing. And one of my fellow students came to me and had a proposal to do a cross environmental field program and needed some help working on that. I helped her at the last minute, and then she ended up moving from that, and then I took the project on. And it was the idea was to take Black and white students, a diverse group of kids, down to the American South to study African Americanisms, Africanisms that were still present, particularly in the Sea Islands. Now, after being in Germany for almost 2 years, I was just shocked at my access to African American history, which was much more powerful in Germany than what I was getting in the curriculum at Antioch. So this bothered me. And so to be able to be a part of a program that would put Antioch's legacy of experiential and service learning to test by giving the students the opportunity to learn from these communities and to serve in these communities and to create a certain kind of activism. So yeah, so go back to previous slides. I want to say, so part of the idea was create this cross-cultural field program, but then adjacent to that was to create this African American Culture Week to be able to activate some of the concerns right here in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Like, if we're going to learn about Black culture in the South, hey, what about right here? And so we brought in all kinds of great Henry Threadgill, R.L. Burnside. We had Karen Patterson emceeing. We had 26 events. I remember going door to door on my bike, raising money for the one-page ad that we had in the Yellow Springs newspaper. So here I learned firsthand how to organize from concept to actual event date. And Antioch giving me the opportunity to go with that. Then also doing the African American culture, the cross-cultural field program, which became part of the curriculum, was also a blessed experience. So here, what you see is the one-page ad, which I'm very, very proud of, because it creates a record. My work is about creating conversations, but also about creating records. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see. Here we see you, April.
Thanks for finding that photo, Tom.
So this is a group of photos here where you're introducing the African American Culture Week in the main hall there, right? And I think we also see Alan Guskin a little bit to the left.
No, I think that's David Benson. That's my Oh, no, you're right. That is Al Guskin. Yes.
Yeah. Then I'm at the bottom. We had Karen Williams at the top. The photos are kind of blurry, but yeah. So, and I want to thank you personally, April, for I remember being in conversations with you and student government. Antioch student government has always been a very powerful instrument and sort of balancing all the kind of concerns that happen on college campuses. So I remember working with you and getting your support, and I so appreciate that, and that we continue to connect now. So thank you. I want to make this public thank you to you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And it was a good time. You're right. This is just the kind of initiative for community government to support. And I was the community manager there along with David Benson at the time.
That's right. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see. So these were the students that we took down on the trip. I think Renee is there. Zadar is there. I'm there. Justin, Gunn. We have all kinds of cool folks here working. Here's Tyrone Brooks, who was the state rep.
Yeah, Cheryl's there. She was a staff person, right?
Right. She came down on the trip as well. So this is the very first cross-cultural field program, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah, so let's go. And then we got some press. Black Issues in Higher Education covered it, and also the New York Times covered it, which I was very, very excited about. To have a picture here with the mayor from Keysville, Georgia, who brought us in her community, and we were able to create a library. And we made some really incredible change. So the students got to sense firsthand how to create change, community change that affects people's lives in a serious way. And that be able to have that recorded in this way was very, very important. And as we prepare for the next slide, I like to say it wasn't always easy. Sometimes these institutions need a little nudging. And so I got letters of support from John Lewis, and also the big heavy hitter, Coretta Scott King, came in with a very powerful letter that made sure to encourage that this project happened. And so I was very, very excited about having, Coretta was an alum to be able to support the project. And also the students were able to go and visit the King Center when they came through Atlanta. So that was great. So in terms of the cross-cultural field program, the African American Culture Week, that was such an important project for me to work on. And the fact that it had such a nice longevity speaks to the kind of community that they had at Antioch and also in Yellow Springs to be able to embrace this. And I hope these kind of projects continue, not just here, but across the country as we support kind of cross-cultural, interdisciplinary conversations.
Yeah. Now, did you say there was a little bit of controversy about this? Somebody took back some donations from the.
Oh, right. So I remember when Karen Williams came through, and she was a very prominent lesbian comic in that community, and so I was excited about having this very incredible comic who's operating in all these different communities MC the event. And just certain Black churches who had given us money realized, oh, this is lesbian, oh, we can't do it, and they took their money back. And I was like, what? This is nuts. But we raised the money and we made it happen. And so, part of this kind of organizing, you realize that there's a lot of work to be done within the LI community as well, in educating folks and building those kind of relationships and kinds of trust to focus on the common goals and common goods. But yeah, that's. And then I like to also say that after I did the African American Culture Week, Bill Chappelle, who was an incredible mentor for me during this time, actually took over with Faith Patterson to continue the African American Culture Week, which ended up becoming the African American Cultural Works, which then became part of the Blues Festival. Works. So that was very important. Okay.
Next slide.
Yep. I want to go and get into some of my work, and one of the things I like to talk about is the power of the creative process and art being a tool, an agent for social transformation. And very often these are just ideas in classrooms, but when I'm here to testify, this really, really works. And I want to give you some examples of how design, redesign, art engagement can create serious change. And very often it's a marathon. It takes a while. And one of the things I learned about the Antioch Cross-Cultural Field Program, AACW, is being able to come all in and engage all of the resources that are available to create this macroorganism that has all of these different elements. And I think that's how I tend to approach these bigger system projects. Mm-hmm. So let's hit the next slide. So basically my work moves in this math, art, text, film, and I have basically 4 major projects. My time sculpture, which was the idea of turning New York City into a clock. Got these objects. So I'm starting, coming out of my Detroit experience, my working class experience, but looking at everyday objects that encode the possibilities for talking about deeper philosophical meaning. And so, the idea of a vase and looking at chess sets as a metaphor for conflict, and looking at clocks as movement through time, and so that became very important. And then going into the mathematical art and the division or the tension between math and art, and what's that about? And then this idea of the square root of love, and then setting up for my most expansive work of Recoloration Proclamation, which confronts and interrogates symbols of white supremacy. So I want to get right into the time sculpture a little bit and show you. So this is a project, the idea of turning New York City into a clock. This is around 1999. And the idea was to spread these objects around Manhattan. And then I connected with a poet. And, I've always had a relationship with the poetry community because I feel like they give a sense of voice and expression, particularly to the visual arts and to object making, that is such incredible collaboration. And so this became the schematic, and my very first show was at DFN Gallery, right smack in Soho. And so that's a blessed, opportunity to land the work right there in the epicenter of American, art making. So let me go to the next slide. I want to talk about my chess sets. So here's a chess set I designed with the pieces of flowers. So I'm speaking to this idea of nature versus nature. We like to believe that all conflict is just about humans and everybody else, but nature has its own conflict with each other that has nothing to do with us. So I'm going to acknowledge that. And then we move into this other chess set, which is called chess set with structural imbalance, right? Here you have a chess set where the board itself goes up and becomes part of the pieces, or the pieces become part of the board. So when you look at the king is part of the board. So the king could never lose because it's part of the board. And then the black pieces on the bottom, they sublimate into the background. So in some ways, this is what I see when I see that when you play chess, the white pieces move first, right? This idea of the supremacy is built into the rules and the regulations already. Whites go first. And so this was my translation of that, my anxiety around that, and creating this sculptural piece where you see firsthand in mathematical geometric terms how like some of these ideas that we have about supremacy and hierarchies are kind of encoded into the material culture, the gaming, the language, the curriculums, and so forth. And so this is, so I resolved this by doing a piece called Chess Set for the Colorblind. Let's see the next one. So this is a chess set where there is no black and white, right? And to play this, you just simply got to remember where you move. You know what I'm saying? That means you got to be a little bit more, cognizant of your environment and the objects in your environment. And I get lazy, and so this speaks to that. So this is one section of that time sculpture, and it shows how already I'm thinking about racial justice and balance in terms of how it can be dealt with in terms of redesign. The redesign of games, redesign of our environment. Let's go to the next slide, please. And please chime in if you got something to say. I'd love to hear what you got to say.
I know, I'm so interested listening to you.
So this sets up for you can see the work is already architectonic and very architectural and shape driven. And so this set up for a big work called Square Roots, a Quilted Manifesto, where I start thinking about the number pi and visualizing it. And let's go to the next slide, where I do thinking about this relationship of math and art. So in some ways, this becomes my philosophy here, this idea of looking at the relationship of math and art. So we have this tree, we have this math tree, fractal tree, and that's called the square root of a tree. And on the other end, we have the tree root of a fractal when we move things 180. And then right in the middle, we get the math art brain. So in some ways, this informed the way I think about everything, that balance between structure, mathematics, abstract truth, the logic system, and then also the art, being able to create, express, emote, and being able to find that balance in terms of how I analyze things and also create things. Let's go to the next one.
So how is the math, the design created on this?
Well, I mean, like, so the fractal tree at the bottom, this is a generative work where you have this Pythagorean tree that just replicates itself in this fractal kind of way, and it has this kind of important tree structure. So where you have perfection, the cost of perfection is it's an inability to intersect with reality in real nervous system ways. Like you can't touch it, smell it, kiss it. It's in your mind, right? But it's not perfect, right? So if you want something to touch and engage with then it's not gonna be perfect. So that's okay. So that's the price you pay as you travel from one space to the other.
Right.
And this sets up for the next. So this got me thinking about curating shows, in the classroom, you know, going to Ringling School of Art and Design or College of Art and Design and creating a curriculum for math art curriculum for art students. And then I started curating shows with all kinds of incredible folks. And then here I guest edited the International Review of African American Art, a whole issue on math art in the African diaspora. So that felt really good to be able to take this. So now this is a level of activism as we think about how mathematics, which in some ways is a gatekeeper of sorts, right, in terms of allowing people to move through different parts of the curriculum, education. Like if you fell in, you know, calculus, are you going to get to med school, that type of thing. So I'm very cognizant of how mathematics in itself has been used as tools for supremacy as well, and being able to demystify that and encourage and stimulate access to mathematical education. So we see the work of Bob Moses, who's done great stuff with the Algebra Project, and putting that in a political context in terms of mathematical literacy leading to like important elements of civil rights and civil access. And so this is very, very important. So here we see that this crisis between math and art, and some of my work tries to address that by creating this intersecting space of math art. Next, please. And so part of my big project was creating these quilts with the Amish here in Sarasota. So I ended up creating 13 math art quilts with them. Next slide, please. And so these are visualizations of pie. Black and white. And so over the years, I've done music, dresses, poems, performances. And last year I did a big thing at the Exploratorium with pie. I'm probably gonna be doing something this year for pie. So every Pie Day, I do an event. So I try to attach to holidays and recurring rituals to keep people sort of connected to the recurrent ideas. Next slide, please. So this is like the system again is 13 quilts, pie quilts, Pythagorean self-portrait, and this kind of African motif. Each of these pieces is about 8 foot square. So this is a gigantic, kind of hyper quilt, if you can imagine that. Next slide, please. So this moves into, that project moved to thinking about, mathematics and asking these kind of mathy questions across these social spaces. And so I became interested in what is the square root of love, right? What times what is love? And so this created this installation piece I did at the Bowery Portrait Club, where I was artist in resident for a year and organized a whole group of projects, but this was one of them that I actually did with Karen Finley, and the music elements to this. And so I ended up doing a dinner for Valentine's Day, where I started asking questions and about what's the square root of love, and then also working with the chef to create a menu. And that inspired me to think about creating a wine project. Next. So I created this wine project called The Square Root of Love. On the back, there's this poem called The Square Root of Love, and this QR code to take you to this video. And the wine was a Bordeaux that ended up working with the winemaker from Saint-Emilion in the south of France. And that was very exciting. And so this sets up to the next slide.
Wow. So, and these were designed to be consumed, like at the event, or was this?
Yeah, to be consumed. You have the poetry on the back, and then now you are the poem now become the structure for this video poem that you access through your phone. But the idea was being able to make the consumer, the audience member, accessible, have access to poetry as well as film and wine, and being able to connect those things in the retail space and also in the art space. So let's get to the next slide. And so this was so I ended up, I couldn't bring the wine over so quickly, so I ended up doing the premiere in Paris, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's not disappointing at all.
Yeah, that's not disappointing. So I ended up going to Paris. So yes, next slide, please. Yeah, so this was in a small organic, the wine was organic, by the way, and it was a small wine shop right near Notre Dame, which was pretty exciting.
Wow.
So what I want to do now is show this video of the Square Root Love. So we come away from my presentation with one of my video works.
Twisting and turning, lighting and burning, mapping the emotional physics latent in the crevices of a physical reality that we call home. And in this home burns oxygen for light, for warmth, for the strange attractor called love. As a system of intersecting impulses and desires, both abstract and physical, both rational and irrational, both relational and singular. As a force of the mind where ideas and principles consecrate secret marriages. As a force of the body where serotonin and dopamine conspire. As a force of the spirit, an antidote for iniquity where heavenly forces inspire. The unification of these fields of forces as a godly opportunity for transcendence and grace. And the foundational elements of humanity. But to unpack the magic of this force, we must examine its product space. The geometry of its language, the rhythm and structure of its path, its elements, its parts and components. We find the root. And in the product space is a list of factors where there exists a square root. A reflection of you and me and all our combinational occurrences. And this root like square root of one square root and simply and magnificently love.
Une trombe tournoyante, lumineuse et brûlante, trace les contours d'une physique affective, latente dans les crevasses de ce que nous dénommons notre havre intérieur. Ainsi dans ce havre se consume l'oxygène, essentiel à la lumière, à la chaleur, à cet attracteur étrange nommé l'amour. Ce système où pulsions et désirs s'entrecroisent, abstrait tant que physique, rationnel autant qu'irrationnel, relationnel autant que singulier. Force de l'esprit où idées et principes consacrent des unions secrètes. Force du corps où conspirent sérotonine et dopamine. Force spirituelle, antidote à l'iniquité, inspirée des forces célestes. L'unification de ces champs de force est un nom divin, celui de transcendance, de la grâce et des éléments fondant l'humanité. Mais exhumer la magie de cette force demande d'examiner son espace produit, la géométrie de son langage, le rythme et la structure de sa trajectoire, les éléments, parties et composantes. Nous découvrons alors la racine, et dans cet espace produit, une liste de facteurs où existe une racine carrée, un reflet de toutes nos occurrences combinatoires. Cette racine peut-être, cette racine carrée, est-elle simplement et magnifiquement, indivisiblement l'amour humain.
Yes. So that last part was a French translation of the English part. And then I went on to do an Italian version of this when I switched the wine over to a Super Tuscan from Florence, which was pretty cool. So hit the next slide. And then I'm gonna, so this, the next slide actually.
Sorry, let me.
Yeah,
There we go.
So I've been doing these Square Root Love dinners every Valentine's Day. The last one which was called Where We Love Beyond the Divide. And what we did, because I'm an artist in residence in one of the restaurants here, the Rosemary, and what we ended up doing is inviting Republicans and Democrats, mostly like officials or political folks, to come and bring their favorite love poems and read them in between the courses.
Wow.
And so that became very, very, very interesting. So this becomes part of the performance and the activism as we break bread, but also have this poetic context and coming from very different spaces politically. So I'm going to continue this project, which actually, comes out of my math art thing. So I just wanted to share that with you. So let's get into the Recoloration and Proclamation. This is going to be we're going to blaze through this. This is a very big part of my work, and also very informed by the cross-cultural field program, coming down to the South and having this affection for my own folks coming from the South, and then coming back here to work, and then being able to see all these Confederate flags. It really spawned me to respond. So the next slide, please. I redid it in red, black, and green, which are the colors of Black nationalism, brought forth by Marcus Garvey in the 1920s. This is at a Ku Klux Klan rally in St. Petersburg, Florida. Next slide, please. And then I ended up going to Gettysburg College, where I presented a new piece called The Proper Way to Hang a Confederate Flag. Got major pushback by the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which basically tried to, constrict the show, and I ended up not doing the full gallows like I wanted to do outdoors. I ended up actually boycotting my own show. So that was big. So this is 2004. Then 2005 is when I came to Antioch to do the commencement speech, right around that time. Around 2015, I organized, this is right after what happened in Baltimore, the uprisings in Baltimore. I decided to, now is the time in 2015. So I organized a 13-state simul Confederate flag burial across these states, these former, and organized teams in all of these states. And we ended up doing burials all on Memorial Day. Then right after that happened, 3 weeks after I did this performance, the Emanuel 9 murders in Charleston happened. Oh. And so right after that, next slide, I organized a 50-state burning of the Confederate flag on the 4th of July. So I ended up going to South Carolina, Columbia, the state capital, to organize. Next slide, please. Yeah, I went to South Carolina. I also went to Detroit. This is an image in Detroit at the Nnamdi Gallery. So I started doing, so now on Memorial Day, every year I organize Confederate flag burnings. So I do Pi Day.
We're going to do that. We're going to do that at Antioch.
Yeah, that's right. And we did it in Yellow Springs. Okay,
nice.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and then around, I think 2017, I organized a mock wedding between a Union Confederate soldier in San Francisco called The Wedding. Annie Sprinkle did the engagement party. Next slide, please. We're at Fort Mason. And then, okay, this is maybe out of order. Yeah, so this is, keep going. And then I ended up actually hanging the flag the way I really wanted to do in Gettysburg at Ohio University right after that. And this is the full gallows as an outdoor presentation. But it took me 13 years later to do that the way it was intended to be done. Next slide. Oh yeah, this is actually from the Fort Mason. You can see Annie Sprinkle there. This is the engagement party. Then the next week we did the actual performance at the state, on the steps of the State House in San Francisco City Hall. Next slide.
Yeah. I love you in your collar there.
Yeah. So you can see, performance is a big part of my work, and being able to, you create objects and then the objects activate a performance. Next. Recently, just this past spring and summer, I had 4 shows across Texas, Florida, South Carolina, and Richmond. The Dirty South show, which was a part of that with my Afro Dixies there. Did the Burn and Bury in Houston. Tampa was part of the big Skyway But the central element was to show I did Afro-Dixie righteous confiscation in Colombia. Let's show you some slides there, which was pretty exciting. So this is part of the show. I was doing a residency there, and also kind of a mini retrospective of the flag work over the last 20 years. Next slide. So here you see I'm hanging all 5 versions of the Confederate flag with the black urns there to be a receiver and receivership of the ashes, and then the resurrective elements of those flags in black, red, and green. And then you see my world's largest Afro-Confederate flag on the right side. So this became part of an exhibition that actually opened sometime, I think it was April, June, May, kind of, I forget, it's all blurred out. Next slide, please.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous installation.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide. And so this is the backside with the fallen cross. You see the triple X over there. You also see the bondage flag made out of leather and chains and that whole thing. Next slide, please. Now, during this time, my live space is right across the hall from this gallery, which is the second floor of this big, gigantic building. It was sometime during my stay there, the police entered my space and guns drawn. I'm 3 o'clock in the morning in the bed, and it just turned into a big national outcry. You know, I responded. Yahoo News picked it up. And so I ended up writing my own artist incident report, addressing the concerns of this illegal detainment. I got detained, handcuffed in my own bed, you know, while these officers are rolling up in this space. So here I am doing a project just confronting white supremacy and Confederate iconography and thinking the Klan has come to collect me in the middle of the night, and it turned out to actually be cops. So this is quite frightening, but it's all became an opportunity to advance the discussion. So next slide, please.
And also why I put safety spells on you regularly.
Right, please. So yeah. I ended up working with some of the incredible activists there, organizing a rally at on the steps of the State House there, the Confederate State of Mind, and also on the anniversary of the Manual 9. And so we created this rally. The idea was to get artists and activists to say no to white supremacy in the Confederate State of Mind as it manifests itself through American policing, right? And through just American social behavior contact. So next slide. And so I was able to take my flag that was hanging in the gallery and put it a part of this rally, which I thought was
How big is that flag?
20 feet by 20 feet.
Wow.
Absolutely. Next slide, please. And we organized a rally. I did the keynote for that. Next slide. We got front page of the State, which is the South Carolina State newspaper. Next slide, please. And then eventually the mayor issued an apology, which doesn't usually happen. But there's still more work to be done in terms of holding American policing accountable, particularly for the lives of Black folks in our community. So
right.
Still very diligent.
Well, it's nice to have an apology. It doesn't stop it from happening.
But still more work to be. And then the last couple slides to show what I'll be working on coming up. So one of the things I've been working on, go back to the last slide. One of the things I've been working on is, you know, there was a lot of pushback on on monuments, the General Lee statue, memorial in Richmond, and so I've been really focused on plantations. So right near Sarasota, there was a former plantation that was acquired by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and the land given to the state of Florida as a Confederate memorial for Judah P. Benjamin, who was the Secretary of State, and it's now become a state park. So I'm actively working to get the name change and actively working to basically occupy this space and making it become a space to memorialize the African enslaved folks that were trapped in this space. And so this became part of an animation, vision of what that space could look like as a kind of memorial to those folks. And also part of the activism is like me looking at slave plantation spaces and my call for them to be righteously confiscated and put into a national trust, right, to be able to begin the repair that American slavery that has done to a whole culture of people. And so this is the next phase of my work as I move out of addressing the direct Confederate iconography and looking at these slave plantation spaces. The last and final slide is a self-portrait that that was created throughout the pandemic, dealing with some of the main elements, which is the COVID virus, coronavirus, and I created a video game from that, also looking at the police brutality, stuff that happened with George Floyd, the pushback on American iconography, the Confederate energy coming out of the White House. So all of this kind of informed this evolving self-portrait, which became part of a 3-part performance that I did at the Ringling Museum of Art during my residency there. And so that work and that performance is now will be worked on and restaged for my new residency to be happening at La Mama Experimental Theater coming up very soon, and I will be workshopping the new iteration of this work. So I'm very excited about that, as some of this political work aims to live on the stage and move throughout the rest of the country. So with all this said, a lot of my work and a lot of the politics of my work definitely germinated and came through the crucible of my educational experience at Antioch College. And I am honored to be following some of the great folks that have come through Antioch and taught through Antioch, like my own teacher, Bill Houston, and Arthur Anderson, and or some of the other incredible folks who've made some very important impact. So with that in mind, I want to thank the Antioch community and the alum for recognizing my work, and gives me energy to continue the work and stay steady in terms of what that work requires. So thank you very much.
Right on. Thank you, John.
So any questions?
Yeah, let me get the chat up here. Yeah, Duffy is applauding. I agree. Great presentation. Looks like we've got some things in here, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. We have just a few minutes before we get started with Terry's presentation, the Horseman Award, but I want to take a few questions and see if we have we have a little bit of time for that. All right, people are saying thank you. You can see there in the chat. Duffy asked if you would talk about your encounter with the police in Columbia, South Carolina, but you sure did that. Yeah, it was a really amazing selection. So when I'm trying to summarize what the work that John does, it's challenging to summarize, but because it's
yeah, one of the things I did talk about was the Afro-Dixie remixes, and you saw that at City Lights. Thank you for coming out. Terry was a part of that presentation. So the work is pretty expansive and and serious. So it's like so much to do, and like I said, it's very important to get the kind of support and recognition from your own folks to help make you who you are. So I solely appreciate that. And but there's more work to be done, and I'm ready to do whatever I can. That's what's up. So
yeah, but I mean, I love how you weave in emotional elements and tactile elements, like the wine and this sort of the experience. So there's this aesthetic that's also a very strong piece of your art, your your political statements.
Right.
And that's, you know, like the event there at City Lights was a particularly interesting way. You want to talk a little bit about how did the music come about
Well,
from that?
the music became an extension of actually the flags, right? Black, red, green flag, and then now being able to. The work also gives an opportunity to connect to other artists. I think when other artists are engaging each other, a certain kind of brilliant energy just flows from that. And particularly when it's not based on money or this or that, it's just about the cultural making of responding to the issues and the flows in the moment. And so to be able to do, to work, it took 13 years to come up with these 13 different tracks. Like it took that long, right? And then be able to take that work and go around the country and have these listening sessions and invite poets and writers like Terry and other folks to respond. So now we're getting ready to the double album vinyl will be ready next month.
Oh, cool.
We have that ready for the New York, and then we're putting all of the texts that we've been able to generate together to do an anthology. So I'm looking for various folks for that, and so that this is on another exciting chapter of the work. So in some ways, my process is very, very, George Washington Carver. Like, what can you do with a peanut? Like you can grind in so many different ways. Like, well, what can you do with ones and zeros? You can express all the numbers you like.
Right?
So
yes.
you ones and zeros, you can communicate digital information and say a whole lot just with basic things. And I think that's what I've approached with this work. Something as basic as the Confederate flag, things around Dixie, and just grinding it in all these different ways to create this garden of response that I think hopefully will be inspirational for activists and artists coming with me and behind me.
Yeah, and then just to touch on it, in case people haven't heard it. So you took the song Dixie,
Right.
and you had artists remix it in what would be traditional African or
Right.
African American music styles,
So
right?
basically a blues version, jazz version, hip hop version, house version, R&B.
Gospel.
So in some ways, it tells the story of Black music. Or another way to think of it is Dixie in the key of Black music.
Nice. I like that.
And so it represents the power of Black culture to occupy, right? And kind of and sort of occupy and reoccupy in ways that gives the opportunity for healing and transformation, and also resistance, creative resistance. And so I think that's kind of part of the work with that.
Yep, it's a really remarkable way to experience that song.
Right.
You have it in these versions that are celebratory and very, very interesting.
And it's a reoccupation. So now my next, I think various people Duffy asked me, what's next? What's next is to apply all the stuff I've learned from Recoloration and Proclamation with the flag and the burning and the bearing, applying them to the American slave plantations. That's the next work. It's to come at the heart of the land and the spaces where we had, crimes against humanity, crimes against justice at its most primal way. And I think we need to get back to the source of the biggest crimes of American culture in a lot of ways. And this is where I'm headed. This is where I'm coming. And this is what's next.
Here.
All right.
All right. So Terry asked if you have a link for the work that you're doing in New York.
Yeah, John Sims Projects. You can
go.
Oh
Yeah.
And also you can follow me on Instagram at John Sims Projects, and there'll be information about that. Yeah, and and you can hit me up on there. Follow me if people want to support, join in, be a part of stuff, check out the work I have available.
Schedule your own flag burning in your hometown.
That's right, absolutely. Well, thank you, April, for this incredible opportunity, and also congratulations to Terry for her big award coming up, which she's going to be talking about. And
that's a great transition. Thank you so much, John. Again, congratulations. It's great to highlight your work today.